This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trends in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini Today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Judith Mancini Today is sponsored by Basic Brands, Inc., providing the highest quality specialty products in the natural food industry. Visit basicbrandsinc.com and enter JMT15 for your 15% discount on your first order, including their best-selling vitamin E ointment, which helps restore moisture and elasticity to your skin. Well, I'm tripping over my words today, everybody. You know, I do everything live, so that's what happens. Well, guess what? I'm going to give you, in the news today, one woman's opinion. And remember what I always tell you, get both sides of the story so you can make up your own decision. Luckily or unluckily, they have found parts of the Titan submersible, and they already have pulled it up, and they'll be able to determine why it imploded on itself. And they also think they've discovered some parts of some of the bodies, which is very gruesome, but I'm sure the families will feel a little better once they know what happens. Although once you lose somebody in your life, you never feel totally over it. So our thoughts and prayers are still with those families. The Canadian fires are affecting my friends in Pittsburgh. Now they're getting a taste of what we get out here in California. I just want to remind you, stay in the house or wear a mask when you go out. It's not COVID, but those little particles from the smoke can get into your lungs and cause you problems, especially if you have asthma or some other problem with your lungs. Please don't go out in it. I mean, it's gruesome. You can't even see some buildings that downtown. It's awful. Now everybody talks about the United States and gun control and this and that and everything else, and we have horrible shootings here in the United States. We're going through a very down period where people don't respect each other's lives. But the Paris headlines today are talking about one of the law enforcement officers who shot a person in a car. And of course, they were from a foreign country. And so this is big rioting there too. So the only reason I'm mentioning this is quit saying that the United States is the only place where there are lots of problems, because other countries have problems too. And we had a terrible, terrible accident on Amtrak in Moore Park, which is very close to where our guest today and I live in Southern California. And 15 people were injured. I haven't heard of any deaths, thank God. But I don't know what's going on, because Amtrak has had some problems lately. But this was a truck hitting the train or vice versa. Aren't there supposed to be warning signals? It just sounded terrible to me. Now, a little bit more of keep updated with Judith and what's going on in her life. You know, I've been podcasting for nearly 10 years, and I was on a different station before that, and my programs are stored on different areas. It's been stored forever on Stitcher, and the name of those shows were Dishing with Judith and Dishing the Details. And if you go on there, you can still find it. But as of August 1st, we're moving everything from Stitcher of my past shows with everybody else on Stitcher. We're moving to Pandora. I don't know why Stitcher is not doing this anymore. I have no idea. And quite frankly, I really don't care. But I didn't want to lose my shows, and I was grateful that we can put them up on Pandora. So you'll be able to see all of my career in podcasting, or at least listen to it rather, on Pandora starting August 1st. You know, we're on 101 podcast platforms, so there's plenty of places for you to look, or tell your friends to look if they say, oh, I don't know how to get on K4HD and press the YouTube button. Because it's easy. We're making it easy for you, okay? So pass it on. Now, the 4th of July is coming. But do you know what it really is? Do you know what the 4th of July is, or have you forgotten all about it because of all the consternation going on in the world today and in our country? It's Independence Day. No, I don't mean Independence Day from your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It's Independence Day for our country. Wear red, white, and blue. Respect our flag. Remember, you live in the best country in the world. You have more freedoms than anyone. You can speak out and say whatever you want. You can support whomever you want. Your children can go to school. We help those who are unfortunate with food and housing and everything else, healthcare. There are not a lot of countries that do anything for their citizens because they're too poor. We're one of the, if not the wealthiest country in the world. So be grateful and remember while you're doing firecrackers, fireworks, why you are celebrating, and respect that flag. Now, this is just a public service announcement about fireworks and firecrackers. Don't do them yourself. Your little doggies, your cats, your pets are scared, terrified of them. But more than that, my brother and many of your brothers and husbands, friends, have served in the most recent wars, whether it was Vietnam, some World War II people are left, people from the Korean War, and Afghan and Iraq and all. They get scared. They have PTSD attacks. They can't listen to those things. Be courteous and don't do them next door. All right? Plus, we don't want any missing hands with missing thumbs. So be very careful. And as I say, celebrate our country in good ways. Now, I want to tell you something as we're going to segue into our guest today. But before I introduce her, I want to say what Judith Mancini Today is about. As you all know, I try to help you women become healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I'm always talking about finding your purpose, finding something to do at midlife. What do you want to do? Well, here's somebody who I think is so creative and what they did. This is Robin Borandi. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. She's 70 years old, and she was a lifeguard in her earlier life in the 60s. She's now 70, as I said, and she has decided, because only a third of the swimming pools, the public swimming pools in the United States, have lifeguards this year. There's a real lifeguard shortage. That even means on the beaches in the East Coast and the West Coast and all the public pools around. So she decided to go back to work. And she is in Philadelphia, and she wants to make sure that these kids that are out of school and have the really hot weather have something to do, that they don't need to have the pools closed, that they can open them up. And she's got so many of her friends and others that have gone back, and this is her new purpose in life. There are now 16 lifeguards over the age of 60 in Philadelphia. Let that be a clue to you. All right, so remember to look at both sides of the news so you can make up your own mind and not be coerced into something you don't believe. So speaking of purpose of life and what you're supposed to do next, I want to tell you about our guest who has written this book. What am I to do now? Her name is Patti Smith, and I'm going to read you just a tiny little bit about her, and then I'll bring her on. She is an author and a keynote speaker, an entrepreneur, and a life success coach who passionately believes in the power of human potential. She has two certifications from the Life Mastery Institute, which is now the Brave Thinking Institute, and the Premier Training Center for Transformational Coaching. I have to tell you, come on, Patti. Here's beautiful Patti Smith.
Hi, Judith.
Hi, Patti. I just want to say one thing about Patti before we get into exactly what she's doing. I met Patti through eWomen Network. This is a network for professional women working, and there's everything from authors and speakers like Patti, podcasters like me, people who own their own business, an exercise studio, all sorts of things. And Patti and I were a couple of the first members in the chapter founded in Calabasas when it first founded. So we've actually known each other for about 10 years, I think. Although we're both so busy, we don't see each other too often. But I really admire her because you all know I lost my son recently. And Patti was so kind. She sent me words of comfort and prayers. And she also asked me if I would be interested in looking at this particular podcast. She sent me Mary Neal's near-death experience. And I have to tell you, that was just one of the most wonderful things anybody did for me. And I thank you once again for that. This is the kind of lady she is. So without further ado, I want you to introduce yourself and just talk about, I think a good place to start is why you started your business, how you got into coaching and all before writing the book, because one of the main reasons you lost somebody very close to you at an unexpected time, and it was a real tragedy. So if you could kind of say a little about your family and that, and how it impacted you and how it led you to being a wonderful, innovative coach.
Hi, Judith. Thank you. Yes, our life is definitely about constant evolution, and some of it we plan and some of it we don't. And, my first passion was the fashion business, and was my career, and I loved every minute of it. And then, I got married and had my daughter, and in the midst of that, my older sister got cancer, and eventually the cancer turned terminal, and I stopped working. It really threw me into a whole new world of caregiving. I stopped working and moved my sister in. She was divorced. She had two kids. One was 10, going to be 11. The other was 13, going on 14. And my world changed as I knew it. And my world was caregiving and family. And 8 months later, my sister passed away. And it literally changed everything for me. And it changed the trajectory of my whole life. And it's interesting because it got me to really think about my next chapter. And I started thinking, I think what happened with me was life was great. And then, and I was in work I loved. I got married to the man of my dreams. I had my daughter. And then, this happened with my sister. And it made me realize, because my sister passed away at 50, and I was 4.5 years younger than her. And it made me realize, you hear life is short. You never know how long you have. But it literally was in my face. I watched my sister take her last few breaths and realized, we don't know what's ahead of us. And so I started really rethinking about, I love my life, but life is about constant evolution. And what happens, I think, is we can get really comfortable in where we are with life. And we don't continue to evolve ourselves the way we were meant to evolve. And it really hit me when my sister passed away, because I always loved my, career. And I realized I was starting to kind of settle into a comfort zone. and realizing
Or,
that we don't know how long we have.
or
Really.
an uncomfortable zone because
Yeah.
you're thinking that there's something more to life and you have something more to give. So how do I do it?
Yes. And you know what's interesting you bring that up, Judith, because I feel like sometimes when we start settling into fine or comfortable, it starts diminishing our confidence
Yes.
and our light and even our dream capacity. And so I think that was the awareness I had. So that's when I started thinking about, okay, what is next for me? And I, believe it or not, I jumped into the healthcare industry because I think that was my world with my sister. And I just had this strong passion for helping people. When I was younger, my family used to call me Florence Nightingale because I was always helping friends with
Yeah.
their problems. So I think that there was that in me that got ignited. And
How
so I
did
went
you
down
jump
that
in?
path.
What path were you following in the healthcare industry?
You know, I wasn't sure. I was really just wanting, like I was in that world of caregiving and patient advocacy. And I knew that I wanted to somehow be a part of helping people. And, I didn't know where it was going to be. I mean, I jumped into a world I knew nothing about other than that I was in a caregiving role. And so I just got curious and I started asking a lot of questions and going to different types of, somebody told me about all these different networking meetings in the healthcare industry. So I just jumped in and did that. And I got a business card that just said, be inspired with my information and started meeting people and telling that I'm open. And it evolved. Eventually I tried a few things and I ended up with a entrepreneurial technology company. And I'm not a technology person by nature.
Neither am I.
I'm still evolving, but I loved what this company was doing. And so they created a position for me. And I was VP of Relational Partnerships. I brought 13 partners into an amazing group that was working on technology to help people that were disabled and people that were aging. And eventually I became president of this company. And it was definitely stretching my green growing edge, but it was an amazing experience. So, and
Well,
then,
that was one thing you did that I really admired because you jumped into it and you just became the president right away.
well, and you don't know what you don't know because I didn't
Right.
feel like it was the right fit, but the CEO was really encouraging me. And I thought, I told him I'd do this temporary until they found somebody, but it was a great experience because it really pushed me to grow in an area that I was very uncomfortable in. And, I was in the second chapter of my life. But, I ended up, down the road, I ended up, some things happened and I ended up having to shut down a company that I didn't even start. And it kind of took me back a little bit. But, what's interesting is at that time, I also turned 50. And that was another new place for me, a new transition, because the moment I woke up when I turned 50, instead of putting the covers over my head and saying, oh no, I'm 50, my first thought was, wow, this is all Marie got. That was my sister. I mean, I really thought about it. This
Yes.
was
Yeah.
all she got. And that's what really kicked me in the butt to say, you know what, you tried something. It didn't necessarily, it was a great experience, but it didn't go how you wanted. But you've got a daughter who's now in middle school and you're a role model for her. And you can tell your kids to do this or try to give them direction. But you know what? When they become teenagers, they're watching what you're doing. And
Yes, they
you
are.
really need to walk your talk. And so that's what really spurred me to go, okay, what is next for me? I thought this was what was next, but it was just a stepping stone. And that's when I, ended up getting involved in the personal development world. And a friend of mine wanted some help with her coaching business, and she was a relationship coach. But I got curious and I said, I'll help you. I've always loved personal development, always studied it, just never thought of it as a career. And then I ended up, getting involved in thinking about maybe I do want to do this life coaching, but I just shut a company down. I didn't know if I wanted to start something. But then I thought about my daughter and I thought about being 50 and I thought about my sister saying, you never, you don't know when your last day is. And I thought, why not? I mean, I really wanted to be a good role model to my daughter and walk my talk. And boy, you know what? I'm so glad I did it because, you know, it's really helped me evolve. And what's crazy, you know, talking about loss, when I made the decision to get certified as a life coach, the minute I made the investment, and it was significant, and I made the decision, my mom's health suddenly took this, you know, turn. And she was in early stage dementia, and one day woke up and was in late stage dementia. And
Oh
I was on
my.
an airplane because my family's from Michigan. That's where I grew up. And my younger sister and I were helping my dad caregive for my mother. And within 3 weeks, she passed away. And, you know, I think if I didn't have this beacon of something to work towards, it would have been a harder thing to deal with my mom passing, because my dad's heart was just broken when my mom passed
Sure.
away. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know loss,
Yes.
Judith. I know a lot
Yes.
of the listeners, I'm sure, have dealt with loss in some way, and it can take you down. But what I realize is when you've got something that's pulling you forward, it can help you get through that. And I didn't know what was going to happen with my dad. And, you know, 3 weeks after my mom died, my oldest brother's only child was killed in a tragic accident. And talk about another transition.
Yes, you've really been hit with a lot of horrible losses and pain in your life.
Well, and you know, that one, I mean, my mom's loss, though of course it's your parent, it was sad. It was a beautiful passing. We had hospice in the house. You know, it was the family was around. My mom went, you know, quietly and peacefully. And then when this happened, it was just tragic and sudden.
Shocking. Yes.
Yeah. But I will say this, Judith, my dad was 87 when my mom passed away, and she was the social calendar. She was the go-getter, right? And my dad, I mean, he was so broken. And then when my niece passed away, he said, I haven't even processed your mom. I don't even know what to do with this. And my younger sister and I didn't think we thought he was going to die of a broken heart, honestly.
Well, he
What was
very well could have, but thank
he
goodness he's still here.
And you know what, though? And this is to all the people that feel like, to your point about the story about the woman who was 70 years old and, you know, became a lifeguard, right? My father called me a couple months after my niece passed away. And he said, Patty, I made a decision. He said, I can either look at four walls and wait to die, or I could reinvent myself. And I've decided to reinvent myself. I was
I
blown
think
away.
that's fabulous. Fabulous.
You know, I could imagine my mother saying that for my mom's personality. But if you knew
Sure,
my
because you
dad,
knew she was the glue that was holding everything together. But your dad, once a man retires, it's very difficult for them. So how did he reinvent himself?
you know what's interesting? My dad, before he turned 80, he retired, you know, 62 actually. He had to take an early retirement, but he was always creative, right? He was doing a lot of stuff with technology, believe it or not, because he was a systems analyst at Chrysler.
Wow.
And so when my mom was still working, he was making CDs of the family and putting music to it, and just always, you know,
How
learning
fun.
things. And then my mom retired and they traveled and all that. But you know, what's interesting is my dad never cooked. And when, you know, his part of his reinvention is he used to build things in his retirement too. He built this beautiful oak bar. He redid our basement. It looks like a home. But then when he turned 80, he said he just kind of lost the desire for that. So when my mom passed away, he decided to learn how to cook. And so he threw himself into that, and he was sharing recipes with the women at the church and my sister and I, and he'd be going to the store Sur La Table, and he'd be buying all this
I love
pasta
that.
makers. I mean, and then he just started volunteering a little bit at the church, which that was not my dad. But he said, you know, I realize I've got my health. He still drives. He lives on his own. He said, maybe my purpose is to be around for people and to be, you know, a support to them. So he would go to the hospital or the nursing home where friends of his were. And it's like he touched a part of him that we never saw this side of him. And to
Well,
be not,
maybe that's where you got it and you didn't know because it was buried deep within him, and then he discovered it. a lot of that is you.
Well, maybe I've gotten, how we get pieces of our parents with us, but
Yes.
it was just to me so marvelous to see an 87-year-old literally reinvent himself in that way. And,
It's
there's two
fabulous.
sayings that he has. One of them is, you got to keep moving. Like you have to keep moving. And the other is, when he had a heart attack, a major heart attack in his early 50s, and he was
Wow.
a healthy person at the time. He was running. He just took care of himself, and they realized it was from stress. So he developed something called a mental switch. Honestly, he calls it a switch. And whenever he was in situations where they were distressing him, he was, it would get him anxious. He literally said, okay, it's time to turn the switch on. And he would turn the switch or turn it off. And he literally would walk away from situations. And I don't care who it was with. It could be his own family, his wife. He learned how to shut things down. And I really believe, he's 93 today. And so
good for him.
And he's still driving, still lives on his own, still cooking. His biggest thing is finding things to do and finding people to do things with, because he's rare to be in that kind of health that he's in. And
Yes. So he's losing the people that he needs to help, unfortunately, because one thing you said was you need to keep moving, but that is emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Absolutely. And Judith, there's an interesting thing that happened to me that made me realize about this whole idea, you got to keep moving. I'd never broken a bone in my body. And a few years ago, I broke my wrist. And I had a cast up to here for 6.
Oh,
do you remember
my
that?
goodness. Yes.
Yeah, I had a cast up to here.
I
And
remember.
they put it on for 3 weeks. It was literally immobilized. And then they took it off to put a short one on for 3 more weeks. 3 weeks I had it on. When they took it off, I thought I was going to feel relief. The pain I felt was excruciating. I thought something was wrong. And the doctor said, nothing's wrong. That's atrophy.
Yeah.
That's because you haven't been moving it for 3 weeks, just 3 weeks. And I thought, wow, that's not moving. We are not meant, mind, body, soul. We are not meant to stagnate.
You're
Because when you
absolutely
stagnate, you
correct.
go backwards, you die. You either you're growing or you're dying. And so we are meant to continually to use our creative faculties. And that's why I always come from that question, what would you love? Maybe you love to paint, maybe you want to volunteer, but whatever it is, there's always something you can do. And
That's
that's
exactly
the
what I
whole point
always
of
say.
this.
Yes, yes. And I think, to be able to sit down and write a book where you put in your thoughts and tie it to what has happened in your life is very meaningful. And it's not just, this is what you're supposed to do and all, but you tell them why. So I think it's a really wonderful book. I think the most important thing too is your mindset, which goes along to moving emotionally, physically, mentally, and all. And you speak a lot about mindset, which I think is wonderful. And I love your father's switch.
The
That he
mental
could
switch.
turn it off, his mental switch, he could just turn it off. Do you want to speak a little bit about mindset?
Sure. Yeah. Mindset is mindset is number one. And I always had a saying with my daughter she will tell you the one thing consistent I said to her, and she's now going to be 20 years old on Saturday. Attitude is everything, because attitude is part of your mindset.
Yes.
And it honestly, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, but it's also another piece of that is the attitude that you have with it. Because there's that saying, what you think you become. Because there's so much science now behind the mind body.
Yes.
And even to the point of disease, which is dis-ease. And so so much
Did you
about
all catch that? She said dis-ease. That's very important for people to understand.
Because think about that, what you think you become. There's been studies about people taking placebos and people getting treated with something, and putting them in studies with mindset where they believe that they're going to get better because of something they're on, and it's literally a placebo, and they actually get better.
That's true.
I mean, there's a lot of science behind it now, and I've become almost a geek for this kind of information. And what's funny, Judith, is when I was a little girl, I didn't think I liked to read. I had 3 older siblings. They were avid readers. My mother was an avid reader. And I read, they were reading Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and all those kinds of books. And I would try to read them, and I just was not interested. And I thought something was wrong with me. So I started reading magazines, and I loved fashion magazines, which was probably a telltale.
17 and all of those young teen magazines.
Well, what's interesting? A magazine that I read a lot was Cosmopolitan. And
oh.
Well, do you want to know what's interesting? What I found was I was reading a lot of personal development articles in Cosmopolitan.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I was afraid we were going to get into the sex angle from Helen Gurley Brown, who was one of my mentors.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, my mom saved, like when they moved and I was already moved to California, one day she sent me this package, and it had a manila envelope with all of these articles I tore out, and I realized, wow, they were all personal development articles, and they were mostly from Cosmo. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but a lot of them, it talks about mindset. And, sometimes people will say, they almost like poo-poo it. Oh, okay, it's another mindset thing. Oh, another coach talking about mindset. But if you talk to anybody who has had any kind of success in any area of their life,
right,
they will tell you, bar none, number one is mindset. Because
I totally agree with you.
And if you think about it, we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, and our subconscious mind is like a computer. Whatever we feed it, it takes in as truth, just like a computer does. And that's where your belief system is formed. So if you keep programming your mind to say you're not good at something, or good, like nothing good happens to you, or you're too old, or you're too whatever it is, you're going to start believing it, and then you start acting based on your beliefs. So, and there's so much study behind this now that honestly, you are what you believe. And so I don't care where you are in life, and we all have stories that have, taken us down, stories that have inspired us. It is up to you to decide, because we have choice every day of what we're going to do. And I think it starts with mindset. And, in my book, I talk about a good way when you're having a bad day, I think, because sometimes it's hard to get out of, you went through something, you got betrayed, you got disappointed, you made a big mistake, you have tragedy. Sometimes it's hard to get out of that. But a really good thing to do, I think, is to really have a gratitude journal. And I have something I talk in here about, do it for 30 days and start one day, like write down 5 things, start off with 5 things you're grateful for. And then just add on every day, one thing you're grateful for, and continue every day to read through everything.
I think that's very important. I was going to ask you about that, because I think it's very important. And people seem to think they're supposed to put things in their gratitude journal that are, oh, I got a new car, I'm very grateful for it. But they think in terms of something big and major happening in it. But it could be something as simple as, I got out of bed and my knee didn't give out. I woke up. Thank you, God, for another day.
And that's, I always tell people, no matter what, the one thing you can say is, I'm breathing.
That's right. It's the same thing.
It's exactly. And it's all the little things. But what was amazing when I did this for the first time, because it's like you start off with 5, and then you add one at night, then you add one in the morning, then you add one at night, but you read through all of them before you add one. And even if there's days you have the same things, it doesn't matter, because the point is, when you're coming from a place of gratitude, it is hard. You can't be a victim. Because you're coming from, in gratitude, we vibrate on frequencies. We're all energy. Everything around us is energy. And so, when your energy is high, you feel good. and you're happy. When your energy's low, you feel low. So gratitude is on a higher frequency, so that it really is something to help you get out of your head.
My 76th birthday was in the last day of May, and on my personal Facebook page, I did 31 days of gratitude.
Ah,
And just because I felt like sharing it with everybody, because I am grateful. I've gone through some really sad, sad days.
mhm.
But I wanted people to kind of know, my friends to know, I'm okay. I'm really grateful for these things. And I was surprised at how many people commented on them. And I think I got them thinking, like you're doing with your book, there are many, many things to be grateful for. It doesn't have to be the big luxury car. There's many things, as you say, because you took another breath.
Well, and you know that saying, my mother used to say this to me because when I was young, I used to always be like looking for, like, I can't wait till this happens. I can't, like, I was looking for, and my mom used to say, Patty, stop and smell the roses. And if you
Yes.
think about it, even when you take a walk on a beautiful day and you just tune into like the birds and the trees and just the wind blowing, I mean, that's just such a good moment. Like it just feels, and that's the whole idea about being present.
Yes, and I think you should do this for the boys in the family too. My daughter is very good about that. She takes her soon to be 9-year old and her soon to be 5-year old on walks. And I mean, every day they're in school and all of that, but there's not a day that doesn't go by that she walks them someplace. And she always stops and have them smell a flower, look at the bee on it. Oh, there's a grasshopper. All these things. And nature is very good. And as you say, your mom said, stop and smell the flowers. It's very important. Bring nature into your life and stop and enjoy your life because it isn't all bad things. There's many, many wonderful things.
And you know, I'm glad you said that because thinking about what you focus on, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, you were bringing things up, obviously. There's a lot going on in the news, right? And a
Yes,
lot of times, a lot of it isn't good. And we've been
most
through a
of it
lot as a,
isn't.
right? We've been through a lot as a country, as a world, but it really is what you decide you're going to focus on. And you know, there's always something that, like, it's like taking responsibility for your own life and your own happiness and saying, okay, these things are going on and I'm not in denial that they're not going on, but what's something I can do to make it a better day? And even if it's doing something for somebody else or giving somebody a compliment or something, but you know, at the end of the day, we are, you know, we come into this world alone and we leave this world on our own. And we've been given free will and we've been given choice. And it is up to us the kind of day that we're going to make for ourselves. And I think if you just come from the place of not being a victim of your own circumstances and you come, like I talk in my book about being like living a life through a vision driven lens versus a condition driven lens.
Yes, yes,
And so, and what I like to talk about, we have these amazing faculties, our mental faculties, and we're aware of them. We know about them, but we really don't understand them. And if we did, they're like our power, our superpowers. One of them is imagination. When we're young, we use our imagination coming from possibility. What am I going to do today? You know, let's make believe. And kids literally use the imagination the way we were meant to use the imagination
yes.
for creative innovation and learning to grow and produce new things and looking at life through wonder. And as we get on in life, we end up using the imagination to terrorize ourselves. Worst case scenarios. Oh my God, what if this happens? And I feel like we do. I mean, if we learn how to get creative with our own life, okay, this might be happening, but what's something I can do that would make me feel better? And it could be taking a walk, like you said.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
absolutely.
have you ever volunteered your time? Or maybe looking into something that's exciting for you. Maybe you want to start a new business, or maybe you want to get into painting or gardening, or my dad cooking, something brand new to him. But it's getting your juices going again.
Absolutely. And you know, you choose happiness. Nobody else can make you happy. You can choose to have that person in your life and make you happy that way with your relationship with your husband or your wife. But you have to choose to be happy instead of choosing to be miserable all the time. So I think mindset is the most important thing. Well, I also think spirituality, which is sort of like mindset. I mean, if you are spiritual, I happen to be Christian and believe in God, and it's very important in my life. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be the person I am, and I think I'm a pretty good person. So I have that, but my mindset, it's, even when you lose somebody you love so much, you have to get up every day and put your mind in the right spot. And no matter what, there's a reason why they left this earth for some reason. Sometimes you don't understand it, but you have to have that mindset that there's a reason for everything, and your reason is being happy and making other people happy.
Absolutely. And
But
oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, you were talking about spiritual. I mean, I really believe it is mind, body, and soul. Because, when I talk here, I have the word ignite is just, I don't know, it's an important word to me, because I feel like when you think of the word ignite, it's about sparking, right? And I feel like when people are hitting a wall going, what am I to do now? We go through, life is about constant change, constant
We want to
evolution.
go through your ignite here.
Yeah. Well, and I came up with that, going through ignite and then the letter U. So it's my Ignite U
Yes.
system, because a lot of people say, okay, yes, I want a fresh start. I want to recharge. I want to ignite. But what does that look like? And so I take you through the system. And the I is inspire your imagination. And that's coming from that place of possibility and wonder. What would I love? Not what would I like or what's practical, but what would I love? What turns me on? And just start, I just say, write them down, like brainstorm, just write down a bunch of things that just come to you. This is, to me, what meditation is for. Meditation is to get quiet, quiet your mind, and then ask questions. And when you talk about spirit, I believe we all have this amazing, beautiful spirit in us. And it's about going within. And that's connecting with spirit and asking your answers. But most of us aren't trained to understand, to go within. It's all about the questions we ask, and asking, what would I love? I know more what I would love than you would know what I would love. And yet
That's right.
if you think about it, we tend to go out and ask everyone around us, what should I do? And it's like, you know more than anybody, but we're not always trained how to do that. And so I say, inspire your imagination is the first. And then the G is get clear with what you want and why. So then once you're kind of thinking about what you would love, it's like, okay, let me get some clarity on what that might look like. And then think about, well, why is this important to me? Because I think when you ground something with a strong why, like, even writing my book, I wanted to write this book and I was back and forth doing it and not doing it, working on it, pushing it aside. But then it started hitting me that I felt like I can't move forward if I don't finish this book. And then when I told my daughter I was writing the book in the middle of the pandemic, and she was, having a meltdown, and I finally said, Christina, I need to have some quiet here. I'm here for you, but I'm writing a book. And she's like, what? And I thought, oh gosh, I just put it out there. Now I really have to finish this.
You do.
So I could be a role model to her and tell her, I didn't just put it out there for myself, but I finished it. But, again, it was a strong why. It was important to me. Number one, to be a good role model to my daughter. But number two, because it was something that kept coming up for me, telling me, it was pulling me, finish this book. And, I can't tell you how amazing it feels to finish the book. I never saw myself as an author, but it was something that I wanted to do. And I just continued to take steps, get support with it. And now I'm a published author. So my why really helped ground my what. And then the next is the N. And that's nail down your decision to go for it. Because the minute you close the back door on, I'm doing this no matter what, you continue to move forward. and you don't make excuses because you've made a decision and you've put your stake in the ground. I'm doing this. I don't know how, but I'm going to do this. So you continue to move forward in what I can do. Then the next I is inviting and support of like-mindedness and mentorship. And that's, I felt like that way about our e-women community, is surrounding yourself with people that are going to support you when you're moving forward with new things, and they're not judging you. They're just here to support you. And sometimes it's working with people like a coach or somebody, a good mentor that's doing something that you don't know how to do, but they can help you see things, your blind spots, because we could all use that. Nobody knows everything, and you can always use somebody supporting you and helping you. And I think it's good to find a community of people that can do that for you, because it really helps you when you're, hitting walls and up against a wall, or just doubting yourself. And then the T is to take inspired action every day, because nothing happens until you act. You can talk about something all day long. You can take classes, you can study, but until you start putting it into practice, that's how we learn. And and I like to call it imperfect action, because it's going to be imperfect until it becomes second nature to you, and not to be afraid of that, because that's how we grow. We grow
Absolutely.
and evolve. And then the E is to embrace gratitude, as we were talking about earlier. Embrace gratitude on your journey, because you want to stop and smell the roses. You want to stop and go, look at what I've done. Not look at what I haven't done, but also look at the things that I've done. Look at how far I've come. Celebrate your wins along the way. And then the last is the U. And the U is uniting with the new self-image, because, Maxwell Maltz was a renowned plastic surgeon, and he wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. And he said, you can never outperform your own self-image, but you can change it. And I like to look at it as an update, because, think about it. We update our phones and our computers and our cars and our wardrobes. Why wouldn't you update how you see yourself? Because the way you see yourself is how you believe. So if you want more for yourself, you want to continue to update your image. I never saw myself as an author. I didn't even like to read when I was young, until I discovered personal development books. I love reading, right? I didn't think I was an author until I started taking steps and just started writing, found a book coach. And next thing you know, now I'm an author. I ran the marathon. I never thought I was a marathon runner until I started taking the steps and training and finding somebody that ran a marathon.
Yeah, that amazed me.
Well, but I think you can apply this to anything in life.
I do too.
So, and life is meant to be lived. It's really meant to be lived. And that's why I'm all about igniting the light.
I totally agree with you. And I get a little upset with people who think that they are old in their 50s or their late 40s. In my late 40s, I took over my publishing company and made it a huge success, 1.7 million circulation for one magazine.
That's amazing.
But then at 50, I found the man I really love, and I got married again at 50. So I tell people, they go, what are you doing? What can you do? I'm telling them exactly what you're saying. You have to go for it. You have to keep an interest in life. You can't just sit back and think something wonderful is going to happen to you. You need to go out there and reach for it. And I think people like you, and you're still very young.
Well, I'm going to be 60 next year.
Oh, no. Wait till you hit 75. I thought 3/4 of the century was really great.
But Judith, you get to be 76 or 75, right?
That's right. That's right. But I also have very good genes in my family. I have 2 grandmothers, one on each side, paternal and maternal, that lived to be over 100. And they had all their faculties too. So I think that was one reason I said, I can't just sit at home after I got married and sold my first company, the publishing company. I want to do something to contribute to humanity. And by helping women, you're evolving. And that's why my name of my show is Judith Mancini Today, because when I first started this, it was celebrity news and that kind of thing. And I had a lot of celebrities on, and it was a heck of a good time, but I didn't think I was contributing anything to anyone, just entertaining them. And I'm not an entertainer. So I switched over, and this is my update, Judith Mancini Today. And I think everybody needs to do that. Give yourself an update. And first of all, we're running out of time, but I want you to know, everybody, you've got to go get this book. And I put on there, rather, one, my fabulous engineer, where you can get it. Probably the easiest place for you to get it is go to Amazon. It's there, it's available. And she's already into the reprint business. That's how good it is. So
you can also go to my website. It takes you right to the link.
Okay, so, and I think your website is on Patti at pattismithcoaching.com. It's going across.
That's my email. That's my email, and the website is pattismithcoaching.com.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So sorry. Okay. Well, you can get them both. If you go to the email, she can email you her website too, if you forget it. So that is a wonderful thing that you have done by contributing this book to everybody so that they can move on. And you are doing coaching also. So they can go there to your email and ask some questions about coaching. And don't forget Ignite. This is really good. And the whole book has wonderful ideas for what you can do. I always like to say, you can teach people how to knit. If that's what you really like to do, they would love to learn. So you can do anything and help people. And if you walk past the person and you like their clothes, give them a compliment. That makes you feel better. So Patti, I have to thank you for being with me today. It was wonderful. It's been far too long. We'll have to get together so we can talk about our businesses and everything else. I miss not going to eWomen, but I'll see you there too. Eventually.
Yeah,
too many things going on.
I love connecting with you. Something I just noticed, Judith, too. You were talking about your show's called Live with Judith Mancini Today.
Well, it's actually just Judith Mancini Today. It's live up there so people will know that we are really here in studio.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, Judith Mancini Today. What am I to do now?
Right. That's it.
The time is today. The time is now.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, absolutely correct. And thank you, Patti, so much. I truly appreciate you coming on, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll have you on definitely for your next book, but in between too. So I will let you go today. Thank you so much. And I'm going to wrap this up for everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And don't forget, the 4th of July is coming up, and be grateful you live in this great, wonderful country of ours. Remember, cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today.